Hello, and welcome to Book Circle Presents An Ever-Mounted Cavalry. I'm Earl Weinberg. We are following the life and adventures of Brother Eugene um, as he is part of the retreat back to England and France by the Grand Norman troops, having been assailed by the transforming magic of the Thessalonians. They are being ferried by their friends, the Channel Fays, to the top of Castleralp, where they are hoping to find dwarvish allies, but the dwarves weren't expecting an aerial assault and rolled boulders down on them, much to their consternation. Brother Eugene looked up into the dark mist and swirling snow. Above those, the sun shone on a cloud that looked white from the outside and on plain rock and trees in a bit of world where war and magic made no difference, and men's bodies did not flow and shift like the cloud he stood in. In the myth, he recalled, centaurs were the children of cloud. Chio perked up and stared into the fog-swaddled crowd. A few seconds later, a soldier worked his way through to them. He was a middle-aged Benandante and looked familiar to Brother Eugene. Was, in fact, Chio's father, Eugene realized. There you are, the man said, giving Chio a clap on the shoulder. Good work alerting the Blood Lady to the Earl King, but I used you to find him. He nodded at Brother Eugene. You're wanted with the brass, brother. What's up? Eugene asked as he followed Captain Della Foresta back the way he had come. Am I wanted as senior medic again? Foresta nodded. Those chasing boulders clipped some of us. No one's dead, but some are injured, including Fitzsimmons. You're to tend them. No broken legs, I hope. Don't think so. You'll have to see. Eugene nodded. How badly is Fitzsimmons hurt? God and St. Martin, don't let us lose another leader. And to friendly fire. Got slammed in the hip. Hurts like hell, but he can stand on it, so we'll hope it's not broken. Which hip? Front or back? Foresta stepped in front of Eugene and stopped. He clapped the monk on the joint where his human hip had been yesterday. That's your shoulder, as you should know full well, or your horse shoulder, or your lower shoulder. That, he pointed back toward Eugene's rump, is your hip. He resumed leading. How confused are you right now? No worse than most, I think, Eugene answered, except about labeling my new bits. I know what's happened to me. I don't know why. I don't know what we're going to do about it. None of us do, though. Foresta nodded. Does Fitzsimmons seem confused? Did he spook? Foresta met Eugene's eyes. After a sober moment, he smiled and answered, Nothing like it. Taught the Blood Lady some new swearing tricks, I think. But he hurts like an old soldier, not like a scared horse. You worried about that? Some. I can feel there are changes in my mind, I think. Hard to tell in the middle of a crisis. How, how is it for you? Foresta shook his head. You ask the wrong man. I've been a werewolf all my life, and my mind doesn't change when I go out walking. Anyway, men and wolves have the same feelings, or that's what we Benandanti say. Different thoughts, different senses, but the same feelings. That's why humans get along with dogs so well. Anyway, I wouldn't worry, even if your heart is half horse now. You know horses at least as well as me. Are they that different from humans in the way they feel? Eugene thought for a few paces. They're more cautious. They startle more readily, on average. Not good in a soldier, but it's hard to spot something like that in myself at a time like this. Foresta waved this away. That can be trained out. Look at your own war horses. Well, yes. Brother Eugene reflected that he hoped he would not stay equine long enough for training to become a necessity. The suggestion? Put on a bit of a show. A show? They've got all the injured gathered up there in front of the dwarf lords to make 'em feel bad. Don't do anything to make 'em feel less bad. Got it. They came to the point where the courtyard met the mountain slope. At the moment, there was a wide tunnel mouth there leading into the mountain, regularly lit with blue-white lanterns. Gathered before it were at least 3 kinds of brass. There were the Grand Norman brass, the Prince, several high officers, and most significantly, Fitzsimmons. He was standing, though he held his left rear off the ground. His face was a scowling mask. Gathered at his forefeet lay 4 other soldiers looking gray-faced and likewise scowling. Then there were the Channel Fays, lords and ladies, standing tall, robed and glowing in their signature colors of red and white, attended by more high-level Fays in brilliant colors. The third group, and the ones the Channel Fays were probably standing so tall for, were the Castler Alp dwarf lords, short and stocky, robed in snowy white, hooded in colorful hoods, their massive, elaborate beards braided with ribbons and jewels. All were trying not to look embarrassed. The one exception was a dwarf with a short plain beard and simple untrimmed gray robe and hood. He knelt among the wounded soldiers, applying some salve to a leg. Brother Eugene sidled past the fairy dignitaries on his way to his general. On the way he caught the White Lord, reflecting loudly and clearly, "Several good words for sorry in Kudzul, if you could bring yourselves." "You're a horse doctor as well as a medic, brother?" Fitzsimmons asked as he approached. "Not officially, sir," Eugene admitted, "but an old cavalry medic picks up a fair bit. May I examine you?" "Please." There was no bleeding. "Can you put weight on it?" "If I must," Fitzsimmons demonstrated. "I don't think it's broken." "I think you're right, sir." Eugene palpated his general's haunch gently. "I swear the damn thing chased me," Fitzsimmons grumbled. "Took a swing at me with one corner." "Happened to me, too," Eugene remarked. "I was a bit luckier. I don't think there's any damage to the joint or tendon, sir, but it must be a champion muscle bruise." "That sounds about right. Snow for an ice pack?" "Yes, sir." Eugene stepped over to the mountain slope, gathered some snow, and applied it to Fitzsimmons' hip. The horsehide shivered, but the general sighed. After a minute, Brother Eugene let go the clump of snow and took out his canteen. "Here, sir. Can't do this on human skin, but it should work on horsehair. I'm going to soak the area in cold water on a winter morning. I'm sure it'll feel foul, sir, but it should be an effective cold pack." Fitzsimmons shivered all over now, but said, "Good thinking." He started working at putting the foot down. "Limp as much as you like, sir," Eugene told him. "It's too soon to stress the muscle." Fitzsimmons left his hoof up in the air. Eugene became aware of shifting lights. He saw the Fey nobles, still shining, were walking away from the meeting point, as were the dwarf lords, everyone now meeting with various subordinates. A white shining man was approaching, trailed by Prince Hugh. "The White Errant," Fitzsimmons muttered to Brother Eugene. Brother Eugene looked the Fey Lord over with interest. Typically, elves were too beautiful to be human, but the White Errant, Rayin Rohir, was not. He was lanky and rambling and looked distinctly middle-aged, at least at the moment. His light faded, showing him clad in a light gray robe and pale brown cloak. His silvery hair included a ragged mustache over a warm smile. Rayin Rohir had been recruited to the Fays some centuries before Christ, but he had started as a mortal, and he still liked them. Of course, all 6 nobles liked mortals one way or another. The Blood Lady thought they were fun. Feantur, the White Lord, practiced a sort of schoolmasterly benevolence, and his wife, the White Lady, a dreamy goodwill. The Red Lord and Lady were even more detached in their goodwill, like zookeepers, perhaps, but goodwill it was. The White Errant was the approachable one. "Feantur's the master at this," he told the mortals, agreed it was a perfectly understandable misunderstanding, while implying it was only understandable from cowardly idiots. "Soon someone asks how they can make it up to us. Well, there's a little master of where to go and how to get there." Fitzsimmons nodded. "Getting anywhere is going to be hard, my lord, now that the Earl King seems to be on the hunt for us, and nowhere closer than England will do. We've virtually abandoned the St. Aloy base for the duration because of it being on the coast. That leaves the Upham base." Rayin Rohir's smile widened. "But our apologetic friends, the dwarf lords, have agreed to let us into Castler Alp, and thence out of the zone." Have a passage inside the mountain? Fitzsimmons wondered. Yes, they're usually very private about it, but they are making an exception for us, with all the trimmings, including ships. We will sail out of Switzerland. Novel, what? Brother Eugene sighed. Every movement of his legs gave him more novelty than he wanted at the moment. Still, they were being helped on their way home. The dwarf medic showed up at Eugene's elbow, or rather below it, disclaimed any particular knowledge of horses, much less centaurs, but approved of Eugene's methods and said he would fetch a long-lasting cold pack for the trip through the mountain. Eugene was thanked, dismissed, and sent back to his friends and beasts. Fellow beasts, perhaps. Soon orders came down the line, the column reassembled itself, and the long train of men, horses, and new-wrought staggering man-horses started moving into the tunnel. Eugene noted Chio's unhappy expression. Don't worry, he said, it won't be like going down a mine. Chio nodded a little. I just can't help thinking of all those tons of rock over my head. Just as I couldn't help thinking of all those fathoms of empty air under me, Eugene thought, each to his phobia. To Chio he said, Castler Alp has stood for uncounted millennia. It'll stand while we march under it. Chio nodded again and tried to look convinced. The tunnel was far higher and wider than any mine shaft, smoothly paved and lit by pale blue crystal torches. The dwarf lords flanked the entrance. Behind them and mingled among them were women. Most were human high, and perhaps actually human. The rest were still taller than the dwarves, though they might have the large eyes or bluish or greenish skin tones that marked them as fays. They stared curiously at the Grand Normans, human and ex-human. Are those dwarf women? David asked Brother Eugene sotto voce. They're so tall. They are the women of the dwarves, Eugene answered. That is, they are the wives and daughters of the dwarves, but you can see they are not dwarves themselves. I'd heard all dwarves were male, David murmured, but I'd heard that they... He broke off and lowered his voice more. I heard a lot of silly stories about where dwarves come from. Brother Eugene nodded, glad that David was being discreet. They marry mortals or fays of other breeds. Their sons are dwarves, but their daughters take after their mothers. He looked over the dwarves' heads at their women. The ladies were as richly clad as the lords, but seemed more at ease. It wasn't any of them who had roused the ire of the Channel fays. Now they were a few yards into the tunnel. The floor was smooth stone, as were the walls, which bent and met overhead in an arched roof. 4 horses, or in this case 2 horses and 2 centaurs, could easily walk abreast, and the ceiling was higher than Eugene could reach, despite his new height. See, he said to Chio, nicely spacious. Chio grunted unhappily. Eugene could sympathize with the boy better when the light behind them failed, leaving nothing but an endless-looking perspective of the crystalline torches before them. He did not really feel cold, and had not suffered from cold since his change. Bulk and horse coat kept him warm now. But an impression of chill surrounded him. It must be, he thought, the magic that constituted the tunnel itself. No mortal geologist or engineer would find this tunnel. It was a seeming, a solid illusion built up by the dwarves. Chio snorted. The stone smell is so spicy, he muttered. Stone smell? Echoed David. Brother Eugene smiled. The brilliant smell of water, the brave smell of a stone, he quoted. What? Asked David, now thoroughly confused. Magic strikes different people differently. It seems like heat or chill to me, but it's little wonder it seems like odor to a werewolf. Oh, said David, I don't pick up on magic. What was that about smelling water? So Eugene recited Chesterton's poem about a dog's view or smell of the world. They haven't got no noses, the fallen sons of Eve. Even the smell of roses is not what they supposes, but more than mind discloses, and more than men believe. In the end, it got Chio laughing. It was noisy in the tunnel, with the clop of hooves and the rumble and surf sound of soldiers talking among themselves. After a while, the voices died to murmur and mutter, and the tramp of boots could be heard under the clatter of hooves. As if he were taking a patient's pulse, Eugene gauged the changing sound. Confusion and excitement had given way to anxiety and weariness. "How long is this tunnel?" asked David, repeating a question Eugene had heard in the muttering. A bugle answered him. It stuttered the signal for a halt. It was repeated 3 times so everyone could catch it, then, after a pause, was repeated 3 more times. That meant make camp, and that meant make lunch. A cold lunch. They had little wood for fire, nor was it a good idea in the tunnel. The few people who started to try were sharply told to stop. But there were other issues. "What can we eat?" David asked. "What have you got?" Eugene replied. "I still have some sandwiches and dried apples." "I got some sausages and cheese," said Chio. "No, I meant, what are we able to eat?" "Can we still eat human food?" "Yes," Eugene answered more firmly than he actually felt. "We still have human stomachs. The dissection showed that." So they put the nose bags on the horses and unpacked their own food. They swapped some of Chio's cheese for different cheese from their neighbors in the line of march and washed it down with water and cold tea from their canteens. "The pain in our horse bellies is hunger, right?" David asked. "I've been assuming so," Brother Eugene answered. "It feels like my human hunger." He paused, then added, "It hasn't gone away, has it?" "No, sir." He looked at the horses' nose bags. "Should we—" "We couldn't chew their food," Eugene told him. "Surely you've tried it at some point?" David nodded. "Our teeth and jaws are no stronger now." "Porridge," David proposed, "or oatmeal, like that." "Right, when we can light fires to boil water." "Or a lot more human food," Chio suggested. "I still got plenty of sausages." "Thank you, Chio, and I won't say no to seconds," said Eugene, "but we can't go on like that with our horse bellies. Constipation and colic. Who's this?" A cavalryman strode up. "Sergeant Dyraclay?" he asked. "Medic?" "Yes." He saluted. "Cavalryman Roy, sir. Sir, we need medical help." Brother Eugene gathered up his equipment and followed Roy up the line of march. "What's the problem, Roy?" Roy suddenly seemed less brisk and military. "I think it's medical, sir. I don't know what else to do." He fell back to stride next to Eugene, who noticed that the man was nearly jogging to keep up with him. "It's my brother, sir. He was shot, sir, like you." "You mean he was transformed?" "Yes, sir. And he was upset, sir. It would be very abnormal not to be upset." "Yes, sir. But he was handling it well enough until we started down this tunnel. Then it got really bad when we stopped. And now— You can hear him now, sir, I think." At rest, the line of march had become a long, thin crowd strung down the silver-lit tunnel, eating and resting, chattering with worry and hope. Here and there were little knots of centaurs or little knots of men gathered around centaurs, all in earnest conversation. But above the noise, as they drew closer, Eugene could hear someone screaming and wailing. Soon they came to a larger knot of men who, instead of talking among themselves, were watching the source of the noise. Brother Eugene pushed his way through to it. A bay centaur was wailing and thrashing in the grip of a big paint centaur. Neither knew how to use their bodies. They fell and rolled about more than anything else. The big paint was grunting, "Easy, Toph, be easy," while the bay, Toph, wailed wordlessly or declaimed, "Hell, this is hell, and I'm damned." A lean, middle-aged man danced and dodged before them, trying to avoid flailing hooves, grab Toph's arms, or even just look him straight in the face. As Eugene got closer, he spied the man's insignia and saw he was the chaplain. "What's your brother trying to do?" Eugene asked Cavalryman Roy. "Beat his head on the floor last I saw," Roy answered. He then pushed past Eugene and dove between the chaplain and Toph, seizing his brother's shoulders. "Toph, it's me! It's Manny! Calm down!" With a sob, Toph hugged his brother, then heaved up, the paint having slipped off sideways, lifting the man off the floor. But then he dropped Manny, shoving away from him with a cry as if he did not dare contaminate him. Manny and the paint tackled him together. While this was going on, the chaplain, puffing, asked Brother Eugene, "You the medic?" "Yes." He watched Toph and the paint both fall over sideways while Manny ducked hooves and grabbed for his brother's wrists. "Got anything that'll quiet him down? Morphine? Chloroform? Rubber mallet?" He had some morphine pills, but there was no way to get them down Toph, and they would certainly not act instantly. What he had instead was his own quota of new horse muscle. As Toph started to rise, the paint got back in the fray and slammed him onto his left side. Eugene joined him. Brother Manny helped. Toph gave one heave, but the chaplain landed on his head, and after that he just lay and sobbed under a pile-up of 2 men and 2 centaurs. "Son, you are not in hell," the chaplain told him. "You've been hurt. Your mind's fogged. Calm down. I'm here to help. The medic's here. Your brother's here. Your friend—" "Peter," said the paint, human torso and forelegs pinning Toph's equine rib cage. "Peter is here too. No fears. No fears. Be calm." "I'm a monster," Toph moaned. "Got nothing to do with being in hell," Eugene told him, his mouth conveniently near to Toph's ear. "Heaven's full of monsters. Isn't that so, chaplain?" "Right. Ezekiel, Revelation, all that. Good company. Now you just—" "I'm a monster. I'm not me. Toph is gone. I'm gone. Lost." "Twaddle," Eugene told him. "Who's this here on top of you? Tell me." Cavalryman Emmanuel Manny Roy was currently lying across his brother's back while Eugene sprawled over Toph's withers and on over Manny. "It's me, you moron," Manny supplied. "Your big brother." "So who is it?" Eugene demanded. Toph was sobbing again, but not as hard. "Who?" he insisted. "My brother." "If he's your brother, you're Toph." "You're Toph," the chaplain seconded, getting Eugene's drift. "You're you, a son of Adam, a child of God, always. You're wounded, but you're the king's man. You go on. Now sit up and let the medic give you something to help you." "Medic?" "Me," growled Eugene, "the one on top of your brother who's on top of you. Now, if you're quite done, let's all get up and I'll see what I can do for you." The steadfast Peter started to rise, and Eugene followed suit. "Fuddle," the chaplain muttered. "It's his nibs." Eugene looked up and inferred that his nibs was Fitzsimmons. A moment later he saw that the general was pacing beside and towering over Prince Hugh. Before and behind him, the chaplain and Peter got off Toph and stood to salute. Brother Eugene waited a few seconds to make sure the panic had gone out of Toph, then left him on the floor, Manny muttering into his ear, either oblivious to the brass or just too busy. "Brother," said Hugh, nodding in response to his salute, "what's the problem?" Eugene paused to think, then answered in a mash of Sindarin and Latin, both of which he knew the prince spoke, but Toph likely did not. "Your Highness, this young fellow was able to refrain from hysterics over his condition until now. The halt gave him time to think, I suppose, which was unfortunate in his case, and I think there's a topping of claustrophobia." Hugh looked sad and nodded. What treatment have you been using?" "The lot of us knocked him down, sir, and sat on him and talked sense to him until he was calmer, I hope. This is all just now happening, sir." He glanced back. Manny was looking at his commanders, clearly wondering if he dared get up off his brother. Toph was staring with his mouth hanging open. "Right," said Hugh. He strode past Eugene, knelt before Toph, and took his right hand in both of his. Manny jumped as from an electrical shock, sat up on Toph's back, and saluted, gripping his brother's waist with his knees with a presence of mind Eugene admired. Hugh greeted Manny, but mostly spoke in low, earnest tones to Toph, who listened gravely. "He's doing a good job," Fitzsimmons remarked to Brother Eugene. "We've seen 5 other cases of hysteria on this little morale tour we're making. He always seems to know what to say. I'm only surprised the number was so low." There was a note in the general's voice that made Eugene study his face. It was tight-lipped and pale. The face Eugene thought of a man who has promised himself a nervous breakdown as soon as he has time. And we'll see if he gets time next time.